Imagine standing on a Brooklyn sidewalk in 1997. You're 29 years old, holding the small, trusting hand of your 3-year-old son, and you are both watching a lazy, unbroken line of rotund rats amble back and forth between the entrance to your apartment building and a stack of leaking garbage. In that moment, a thought floats up, clear and cold as icy. This is not working. Something needs to change fast. This isn't a scene from a movie. This was the moment that ignited the journey of Paul Podolsky, the author of our book today. It's a moment that reveals the first and most uncomfortable truth about money. It is not an abstract concept of stocks and bonds. It is visceral. It is the raw, urgent need to protect your family from the rats. Today, we are diving deep into a book that is less of a financial guide and more of a philosophical manual for navigating the chaotic, unpredictable, and often terrifying world of money. This is The Uncomfortable Truth About Money, How to Live with Uncertainty and Think for Yourself, by Paul Podolsky. The core problem this book tackles is the profound disconnect between what we want from money and what money actually is. We crave stability, security, and predictability. We want a safe harbor, but the financial world and life itself is a raging, unpredictable ocean. We are given simple, comforting slogans like stocks for the long run or just follow your passion. But these are like paper umbrellas in a hurricane. They are flimsy, they fall apart at the first sign of trouble, and they leave us soaked and shivering, wondering what went wrong. Most of us are financially illiterate, and we are ashamed of it. We are more willing to discuss the intimate details of our sex lives than the balance of our bank accounts. This silence, this insecurity makes us vulnerable. It makes us prey to our own anxieties and to a system that often feels rigged against us. But here is the grand promise of this book. Paul Podolsky, a man who has lived at every level of the financial food chain, from a struggling journalist living with rats on a $38,000 salary, to a banker at a global institution, to an equity partner at the world's largest hedge fund, Bridgewater Associates, working alongside the legendary Ray Dalio, is here to be our guide. He is not going to give you a get-rich-quick formula. He is going to do something far more valuable. He is going to give you a set of mental frameworks, a series of lenses through which you can see the world, and your place in it, with stunning clarity. He promises to teach you how to stare into the face of uncertainty and not flinch, how to distinguish logic from emotion, signal from noise, how to build a life that is not just financially resilient, but also meaningful and rich with the one thing money can't buy: a sense of awe. This book is the money talk you never had but always needed. It's the map to the cage we all live in, and the key to finding freedom within its walls. To truly understand money, Paul Podolsky argues, you must first understand that your financial life is not governed by a single, orderly system. It is battered and shaped by two powerful, chaotic, and simultaneous forces, the disruption inside of you and the disruption outside of you. Let's start with the internal disruption. This is your personal wiring, your emotional reflexes, your family history, your deep-seated beliefs about wealth and scarcity, which are typically imprinted on you from a very young age. Podolsky lays his own life bare to illustrate this. He was thrown off balance by the chaos of his mother's early death from cancer. This experience instilled in him a deep, lingering awareness of how suddenly the bottom can fall out of life. But he was also given an enormous advantage by the order of his father's mind. His father was a scientist out of central casting, a man who worked on the Manhattan Project, a calm, sober, logical force who taught by example: get the best education you can, and do not spend lavishly. This duality, the fear of sudden disaster and the instinct for rational order, shaped every financial decision he would ever make. And he is not alone. Every person we know, he says, has their own glitches. His wife, Marina, grew up in the Soviet Union, a state that penalized independent thought, with an abusive, alcoholic father and a constant shortage of basic goods like food. Her philosophy became ruthlessly practical: more is better, but don't waste it on silly stuff. Their attempts to pass on a simple message of education and frugality to their own children were complicated by their kids' own unique wiring, their own learning challenges, their own experience of growing up more affluent and less scrappy. We tend to see our own starting conditions as normal, but they are utterly random. And this randomness has a massive impact. Look at the data on household wealth. In 2021, the 10th percentile of U.S. households had zero wealth. The 50th percentile, the absolute middle, had about $166,000. and the 90th percentile had over $1.6 million. Where you start on this ladder is a matter of chance, but climbing it is a matter of strategy. And the more disrupted your internal world is, the harder it is to be calm enough to find that strategy. Podolsky's first, crucial piece of advice is therefore not about money, but about mindset. The first step on the money journey is learning to think calmly and accurately about yourself, about what's going on around you, and how you fit into it. A combination of sleep, diet, exercise, therapy, meditation. These are not luxuries. They are the essential tools for training your mind to see your own chaotic thoughts as just thoughts, not reality. This is the foundation upon which all financial success is built. Now, let's turn to the external disruption. While you work on calming your internal world, the external world is in a state of constant, violent flux. The economist Joseph Schumpeter called this creative destruction. Old industries are perpetually being destroyed and new ones are being created. Think of the transport industry shifting from horses to combustion engines to electric cars. Or think of Podolsky's first job, delivering the Washington Post. In his youth, the Post was a titan, a force so powerful its reporting brought down a president. But then came the internet. It destroyed the Post's business model, drying up its cash flow until it was a shadow of its former self, eventually purchased by an internet disruptor, Jeff Bezos. If you are on the winning side of this disruption, it feels like progress. If you are the cab driver whose livelihood is appended by Uber, or the typewriter manufacturer made obsolete by Microsoft, it feels deeply and profoundly unfair. Most of us crave stability, but the engine of capitalism, the very thing that generates rising wealth, is predicated on the opposite constant, relentless, disruptive change. This creative destruction gives birth to more violent, acute shifts economic crisis. Podolsky has lived through them firsthand: the 1998 Asian financial crisis, the 2000 tech collapse, the 2008 credit crisis, the global pandemic. He describes the visceral feeling of a crisis. Imagine having saved through years of hard work, the $100,000, and then watching it shrink by tens of thousands of dollars in a matter of days. That is what a crisis feels like. And in those moments, your internal disruption, your anxiety, your fear, interacts with the external disruption, and it can become paralyzing. There were times, he admits, when his nerves got so bad he was crushed by headaches, a total lack of emotional resilience. Great investors, he learned, study these crises like psychologists study human trauma. His old boss, Ray Dalio, was forever shaped by the Great Depression, which his father had lived through. Dalio's framework is that economies move in cycles, driven by the expansion and contraction of debt. When people and companies borrow, they spend, creating a boom. But that debt must be repaid. If too many people try to repay their debt at once, spending collapses, and you get a bust. The system is structurally unstable. Another legendary investor, George Soros, had a different framework called reflexivity. Soros focused on psychology. When we buy a stock, the price goes up. We feel richer, so we spend more, which boosts the economy and might make us want to buy even more of the stock. It's a self-reinforcing loop, both on the way up and on the way down. The key takeaway from all these frameworks is the same: the system is rickety. Your job is unstable, your savings are unstable, your health is unstable. The very country you live in might be unstable. We want security for money, but money structurally cannot provide it. The first and most profound step in mastering money is to accept this constant disruption. To stop expecting things to go well, and instead, build the internal calmness and the external frameworks to navigate the world as it is, a place of magnificent, terrifying, and inescapable volatility. Once you've begun the work of calming your internal chaos and accepting the external chaos, you face the most practical of questions. How do you earn money? Podolsky argues that you must approach your income by considering four crucial elements: your needs, your offer, scale, and change. First, your needs. This is not a vague feeling. It is a hard number on a spreadsheet after taxes. Podolsky runs his own finances on a spreadsheet, tracking every expense, not because it's fun, but because it's effective. It's the equivalent of a scale for managing weight. Early on, he says, you must be ruthless. Strip out everything you don't absolutely need. When he and his wife were starting out, a date night was sharing a single cup of tea at Starbucks. He learned this frugality from his grandfather, a man who lived through 2 world wars and the Great Depression, a man who ate simple wheat berries for breakfast, disdained television, and when it got cold, drove to rural Mexico rather than buy winter clothes. Nature was his other great teacher. Camping in the woods teaches you the sharp difference between the superfluous, a thick mattress, and the essential, clean water. The modern world is filled with the superfluous, and early in your journey, it will suck the money right out of your pocket. You must know with precision the cost of your survival. Second, what do you offer? School, Podolsky provocatively claims, doesn't teach you your special talent. It mostly teaches you what you're bad at. It rewards information recall and regurgitation. But in a global labor market, you must know your unique gift. This is a process of discovery. For him, it meant failing at pre-med, which his father wanted for him, and finding that while the writing for a history degree was hard, it wasn't as impossible as the science. He eventually realized he had a unique ability to bolt together history, journalism, languages, and economics into a single profession, explaining the world and how to invest in it. A key question you must ask yourself is how much to push through difficulty. Pushing is essential, but you can also push yourself unproductively. The goal is to find the intersection of what you are uniquely good at and what the world actually needs. Third, scale. This is about how you apply your special ability. To earn significant money, you need to either do a job that very few people can do, like a brain surgeon, where supply is low and the price is high. Or, you need to do a job that has scale. A classical musician in an orchestra has incredible talent, but their output hasn't changed in hundreds of years. There is no reward for playing Beethoven faster, but a musician who scores a film that reaches a mass audience has scale. A software engineer who writes code that can be used by millions of people has scale. Google has ultimate scale. Their costs are people and computers, but they can sell to the entire world. Wall Street, he discovered, also has scale. It takes no more effort to move $1 billion in a foreign exchange transaction than it does to move 10 million. But the profit is exponentially larger. For each dollar transacted, the bank takes a tiny spread. On a $1 billion ticket, that tiny spread could be $500,000. For a few minutes of work. That, he realized, was the secret. That was how bankers made their money. Finally, change. The final element is recognizing that the value of your offer and the potential for scale are constantly changing. Podolsky lists the companies he's worked for: The Washington Post, a joint venture with AP, Dow Jones, Bank Boston, Fleet, Bank of America, a hedge fund. Nearly all have failed, been bought, or fundamentally changed. Big income attracts competition, which destroys income. His own income only rose because he was constantly jumping from one melting iceberg to the next. You must pay attention to the tectonic shifts. Just as your hobbies can reveal your passion, your own changing behavior can reveal the future. He used to get music from a record store. Now an algorithm chooses it for him. He used to check out with a person at the pharmacy. Now it's a computer. This means jobs like cashier, paralegal, or librarian are in danger. Owning a chain of oil change stores is a bad bet in a world of electric cars. But it's not enough to see the change coming. You must also know if that change is already in the price. And that is the topic of the next crucial framework. To truly understand money, Podolsky insists you must understand prices. Not just the price tag on a pair of jeans, but the price of everything. Your salary is the price of your talent. Your bills are the price of your consumption. Your investments are today's prices on tomorrow's savings. Life is a constant negotiation of prices, and they are not as simple as they seem. A price is two things at once. It is a precise measure of supply and demand right now, and it is an expectation about tomorrow. This is a fundamental, and often misunderstood, concept. The price of a stock isn't just about what a company is earning today. It reflects the collective expectation of what it will earn in the future. Demand for essential goods like food and medicine is primal and constant. But technology radically changes prices over time. The cost of sending a message, which once involved paying by the letter at a telegraph office, as Podolsky did in Moscow in 1990, is now essentially zero thanks to email. If you want to be good with money, your entire strategy must revolve around a simple diagram. Podolsky presents. Imagine two bell curves. One represents all possible incomes you could earn. The other represents all possible prices you could pay for goods and services. Your goal is to earn your income from the high end of the income curve and pay for your consumption from the low end of the spending curve. You want to be the software engineer who shops at Costco and drives a beat-up Subaru. It is this gap, the space between a high-end price for your labor and a low-end price for your lifestyle, where wealth is built. In some ways, wealth is simply the discipline of paying attention to the prices you pay. Let's break this down. First, the price of labor. Societies have never figured out how to set a price for labor that everyone agrees is fair. It is a delicate and constantly shifting balance. When the gap between the rich and poor becomes too wide, social stability frays, fueling political volatility. This dynamic is managed through taxes and negotiations, but ultimately, the price for your labor is set by the market. You must be realistic about what you have to offer. How many other people can offer a similar skill, and what someone is willing to pay for it. Then there is the price of consumption. Here we face a brutal truth. For goods like shelter, healthcare, and education, prices are driven disproportionately by the demand from high-income consumers. This structurally puts these things out of reach for a significant part of the population. This creates a moral choice. To afford things with less stress, you are positioning yourself so that someone else takes the more uncomfortable spot. Podolsky thought he would always choose the moral high ground until he was faced with the rats. When he was offered a job at a bank, he took it instantly. Solving one problem, the rats, created a new one. How much should he save? His perception of needs began to change. He shares a harrowing story. After moving to a suburb, he was at a gas station and saw a horribly disfigured car. The attendant told him it was T-boned on the Merritt Parkway the night before. The driver didn't survive. He looked at the mangled driver's side, saturated in a dark stain, and then looked at his own children in the back seat of his modest Honda. He went home and researched the safest cars. The safest car that year was an Audi, costing twice what he'd ever paid for a car. He bought it. Years later, he and his wife were T-boned on a bridge. The Audi was totaled. They were fine. Would they have survived in a cheaper car? Maybe. But what bets are you willing to take? Prices reflect these choices. Finally, there is the price of saving or investing. Here, the rule is simple and humbling. Everything known is already in the price. To make above average money, you have to see something that is not yet in the price, a future that is not yet reality. This is why successful investors are so rare. By the time it's obvious that Apple is a great company, its price reflects that. The real money was made in the 1990s when Apple looked like it might die. Investing is often a zero-sum game. If you buy Apple's stock, someone else is selling it to you. Only one of you can be right. This brings us to one of the most subtle and important concepts in the book, The Existence of Castes. Within any industry, there is a caste system. This isn't about race or ethnicity, but about money and power. When Jason, his source, brought Podolsky into the bank, he changed his caste. And it was a shock. He had to learn a new vocabulary, a new set of rules. The most important rule, the dress code. Suits are black, gray, or blue, not brown. Jason instructed on his first day. Shirts are solid white or solid blue. A check shirt is okay on a Friday. That was the last time he wore the brown suit. But there are castes within castes. The question he started to ask was, okay, bankers get paid a lot, but who gets paid more? The answer was the prop desk. Traders who bet the bank's own capital, but they were scared to take too much risk. The real money, he discovered, was being made outside the bank, at places like the hedge fund he would eventually join. At Bridgewater, the founder Ray Dalio wore shorts and Crocs. The uniform sent an unmistakable message. I don't follow the rules. I make my own rules. And if you earn this type of money, you can too. Shifting castes is hard, but it is possible. It requires understanding the unwritten rules, the power structures, and the flow of money. It requires playing the game of office politics. He describes needing to chart the hierarchy, understand the personalities of his bosses, and learn how to handle bullies. It's a world of tells, leverage, and making others feel safe. It's more high school than college, he says, and it's a central part of any job where your performance is subjective. Understanding these prices, these castes, and these political games is not a cynical exercise. It is a necessary strategy for survival and success within the money cage. After a decade and a half inside the intense, high-stakes world of Bridgewater, Podolsky came to a realization. He had saved enough. He could not live large, but he could live. He was no longer content being the Indian to raise chief. He craved being the owner of his own work, his own ideas. And so he left, and his salary went from millions to zero. That hurt. But it was a conscious choice, a strategic exit from what he calls Sniper's Alley. Sniper's Alley is the final, crucial part of the money maze. It is populated by all the forces, internal and external, that are out to hurt you. The most likely sniper for all of us is disease. In wealthy countries, the big killers are cancer, heart disease, dementia, and diabetes. Genes play a role, but so does choice. Podolsky's mother smoked and died before she was 50. As he aged, he saw friends die in their 50s from cancer, from heart failure. He realized that if the point of money is liberty, what use is that liberty if you are sick? He started to invest in his health as seriously as he invested in his portfolio, prioritizing sleep, exercise, nutrition, and socialization. He even learned the power of vitamin N, the ability to say no to things that harm you in order to say yes to a healthy old age. But disease is not the only sniper. Toxic people are another. People can prey on one another. There are the outright frauds, like the colleague fired for taking points in a trading scheme. But more insidious are the manipulators, the people so good at their game you don't even know you're being played. Podolsky tells of a salesman so charming and funny he was impossible to resist, a man who, he later learned, was a deeply flawed alcoholic who had almost killed someone in a fight. He shares the chilling experience of being in the same room as Vladimir Putin and completely misreading him as a belligerent businessman, not a future war criminal. The lesson is to watch for the tells, the breaks in character, and to keep your distance. If you feel yucky after speaking with someone, that is a signal. Trust it. And then there is the sniper within ourselves. We can do unpleasant things. He recalls shoplifting as a 7-year-old boy, a year after his mother died, caught up in the romance of being an outlaw like Butch Cassidy. The feeling of being caught, the protracted guilt, was a warning sign. These feelings exist for a reason. They keep us on track. This brings us to the ultimate question of the money journey. What is enough? There is a mathematical answer. Podolsky offers a formula: you can stop working when the money you have saved, divided by the years you expect to be alive, is more than your annual expenses. But this cold calculation is flawed. No one knows how long they will live. He recalls a colleague who followed all the rules, saved millions, drove a beat-up truck, retired at 50, and was dead from pancreatic cancer by 56. Would his mother have lived differently if she knew her time was short? Of course. We are trapped in a paradox. We must plan for a long life, while knowing we might live a short one. The only way to navigate this is to find a balance, to be thoughtful and strategic about money, but also to make room, lots of room, for all. To feel the excitement of walking down a street in Sil at dawn, to hear the chant at a temple in India, to see a bald eagle catch a fish. To spend the money that allows these experiences to happen. As Podolsky got wealthier, his definition of needs evolved. It expanded beyond his own family's survival to include the needs of others, helping family with medical bills, supporting friends struggling with mental health. He was no longer just fighting the wolves for himself. His goal became not just to accumulate wealth, but to find a balance between safety and connection. He shares a final, poignant diagram. On the y-axis is safety. On the x-axis is connection to others. As wealth increases from zero, it buys you both more safety and more connection. You can afford a safe car. You have enough extra money to throw a dinner party. But at a certain point, the curve hooks back on itself. Excessive wealth begins to decrease your connection to others. It separates you. You fly on a private plane, isolated from the humdrum reality of the world. You become an object of envy or resentment. You drive a wedge between yourself and the human community. Finding your spot on that curve before it hooks back is the great challenge of a life well lived. It is the striving to get this balance right that led Podolsky to quit his fancy hedge fund job. It led him to a pool in Middlebury, Vermont, years earlier, when his father was dying, where he was churning through the water, full of anxiety, and heard his dead mother's voice ask, "Are you happy?" That question became his beacon. Money cannot make you happy, but it can give you autonomy, which can make you happier. His journey, from the rats on the sidewalk to the private jet, and then his choice to walk away from it, is a testament to this final, most uncomfortable, and most important truth. So what makes The Uncomfortable Truth About Money a must-read, a book radically different from the thousands of other finance books on the shelf? It's this. This book is not about money. It is a book about life, viewed through the unflinching lens of money. Paul Podolsky is not a guru selling you a system. He is a philosopher, practitioner who has journeyed into the very heart of the global financial machine and returned with a map, not of how to get rich, but of how to be sane. What makes it unique is its brutal honesty and its profound humanity. It rejects all the easy slogans and comforting lies we tell ourselves about wealth, success, and security. Instead, it forces you to confront the chaos in the markets, and more importantly, the chaos within yourself. It connects the dots between your childhood money stories and your investment portfolio, between office politics and your retirement number, between the global flow of capital and the safety of the car you drive. It is the only book I know that will discuss asset allocation and creative destruction with the same gravity as it discusses the feeling of holding your child's hand while watching rats, or the moral complexity of buying a safer car. So, who is this book for? It is for the intelligent, curious person who has always felt a low, great anxiety about money but couldn't articulate why. It's for the young professional starting out who wants a real world guide to the labyrinth they are about to enter. It's for the seasoned individual who has followed the conventional advice and still feels insecure. It is for anyone who is tired of simplistic formulas and is ready to learn how to think from first principles. Who is this book not for? It is not for the person looking for a hot stock tip or a 7-step plan to financial freedom. It is not for the faint of heart who want to be told that everything will be okay. This book's title is not a gimmick. The truths inside are genuinely uncomfortable. The single most valuable takeaway you will be left with long after you've finished the last page is a new way of seeing. You will have a durable set of mental frameworks that will allow you to look at any financial news, any personal decision, any global event, and understand its moving parts. You will gain a sense of resilience that doesn't come from having a lot of money, but from understanding how it truly works. You will learn to be your own guide. We've journeyed today from a rat-infested sidewalk in Brooklyn to the sterile silence of a private jet, from the cold mechanics of a bond yield to the warm memory of a heated quilt. We have seen that money is a cage, an inescapable part of our existence. But Paul Podolsky has shown us that understanding the shape of the bars is the first step toward finding freedom within them. This summary has given you the blueprint of that cage. We've sketched its dimensions and pointed out its hidden doors. But to truly learn how to navigate it, to feel the emotional weight of the stories and internalize the profound, life-altering lessons, you must walk through it yourself. Reading this book is the journey itself. It is an investment not in your portfolio, but in your own clarity and resilience. So, if you are ready to stop being a passenger in your financial life and become the navigator, then I urge you to pick up your own copy of The Uncomfortable Truth About Money. The link is in the description below. This is more than a book. It is a tool for a wiser, calmer, and more authentic life. Thank you for joining me. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into books that matter.